Jungkook sits at his desk in his office, tapping his pen impatiently as he waits for the next candidate to walk in. He glances at the stack of resumes in front of him, signing. None of the previous candidates had been what he was looking for, either too inexperienced or lacking the medical knowledge to properly care for his wife. His phone buzzes as he looks down to see a message from this assistant. The next candidate is here. A knock on the door follows, and Jungkook straightens in his seat. Come in, he calls, his voice firm but polite. The door opens, and the middle aged woman steps in, her posture confident but not overbearing. She offers a polite smile as she approaches the desk. Good afternoon, Mr. Jeon, she greets, bowing slightly. My name is Mrs. Kim. Jungkook nods, gesturing her to take a seat. Mrs. Kim, please sit. Thank you for coming in. She sits down, her hands folded neatly in her lap. There is a calmness to her presence which Jungkook immediately notices. He flips through her resume as she speaks. So, Mrs. Kim, it says here that you worked as a house help for over 15 years and have experience with childcare as well. Can you tell me more about your experience? Mrs. Kim nods, yes, of course. I worked with the several families, and in two of those families, I was hired specifically to help the mothers through their pregnancies. I have raised three children in my own, so I understand the care, patience, and attention to a detail a pregnant woman requires. I also have some basic medical training, just enough to recognize warning signs and ensure proper care in case of an emergency. Jungkook leans back in his chair, his finger tapping against his desk as he thinks. That's good to hear. My wife, she's very stubborn, he admits with a sigh. She tends to skip meals and she doesn't always listen when she's told to rest. It's going to take someone with real patience and authority to make sure she takes care of herself. Mrs. Kim smiles softly. I understand, Mr. John. Pregnant women can be quite independent, but it's important to approach with empathy. I have found that building trust and understanding is a key. I don't believe in being forceful, but I do know how to be firm when it comes to health. Jungkook rubbed his temple, feeling the weight of the conversation. No, Mrs. Kim, I don't think you're fully understanding the situation. Mrs. Kim looks at him curiously, sitting back down. What do you mean, Mr. Jeon? Jungkook sighs, leaning forward on his desk. My wife, she's not just any pregnant woman. She's a spoiled kid. He says bluntly through there's a trace of affection in his voice. She throws tantrums, she's stubborn, reckless, and thinks she knows better who can keep her in line without pushing her too hard. He runs a hand through his hair, clearly stressed. I don't want someone who's just going to let her do whatever she wants, but I also don't want her feeling like she's being controlled. She needs a firm hand, but with care and patience. Do you get what I am saying? Mrs. Kim nods, slowly absorbing his words. I see, so he used to getting her way, and you are worried she'll push back on any kind of structure or guidance. Exactly, Jungkook says, relieved that she's starting to understand. She never had to really follow anyone's rules. And now she's pregnant. It's more important than ever that she take care of herself, but convincing her for that, that's a whole. Mrs. Kim smiles softly. I understand, Mr. John. It sounds like what your wife needs is someone who can handle her with both firmness and kindness. Jungkook leans back in his chair, exhaling. That's exactly what I need. Someone who can see through the tantrums. Mrs. Kim chuckles softly. I have learned that it's not always about winning a battle in the moment. Sometimes it's about offering options. Jungkook feels a sense of relief at her answer. Finally, someone who seems to get it. He leans forward, extending his hand. Thank you, Mrs. Kim. I think we'll be in touch very soon. Mrs. Kim smiled warmly and started shaking his hand firmly. Thank you, Mr. John. I look forward to hearing from you. Jungkook leans back in his chair with a sigh of relief as Mrs. Kim leaves the office. Finally, he feels like he's found the right person for the job, someone who could handle the storm that is his pregnant, stubborn wife. He presses the intercom to call his assistant. Sunji, can you cancel the rest of the interviews and send the candidates home? I have found the right one, Jungkook says, already imagining some space. Just as Jungkook is about to relax, the door to his office flies open and someone storm is uninvited. The figure is clearly not one of the candidates Jungkook had expected. The voice that follows makes that even more clear. This is so unprofessional, the intruder announces dramatically. Jungkook's assistant rushes in right behind him, looking panicked. I'm so sorry, Mr. John. I tried to stop. Jungkook holds up a hand, stopping her midway apology. It's fine, I've got this. You can leave now. The assistant gives in an uncertain note and hurriedly exits the room, leaving Jungkook with a strange figure. He rubs his temples, already exhausted, before he looks up to see a woman who Jungkook begins but stops, his eyes narrowing as he looks closer at the person in front of him. The hair, the clothes, and the he takes a long, exasperated sigh, knowing exactly what's happening here. Dad, Jungkook says, voice firm. The woman, or rather, the man dressed as the woman, dramatically whips around, whose dad comes to overly high-pitched response, accompanied by the flutter of hands that's supposed to seem dainty but look anything but. Jungkook raises an eyebrow, leaning forward on his desk. I know it's you, Dad. The intruder frowns, the drops the act, yanking the wig off in defeat. How did you know? His father in law asked, looking genuinely disappointed that his grand disguise didn't work. Jungkook's eyes flick down at the enormous, clearly fake. For starters, he say, pointing at them with a deepened expression. These don't even look remotely normal. They're about to roll off your chest. His father looks down at the giant form inserts as if they were some minor detail and shrugs. I thought they added authenticity, he mumbles, tossing the wig onto the desk and slumping into a chair in front of Jungkook. Jungkook just stares, pinching the bridge of his nose in frustration. What the do you want, Dad? You dressed up like this just to get into my office? His father whines, leaning forward dramatically. I want that job. I told you I want to take care of my baby girl. Jungkook leaned back in his chair, laughing humorlessly. Are you serious? You dressed up like this just to try and convince me? At what point did you think this would work? Your father, I was being resourceful, your dad said out proudly as if dressing up as a woman was a stroke of genius. Jungkook laughs ties quickly as his frustration boils over. He slams his hands on desk. No, you were being ridiculous. You are going to crazy lengths to spoil wine and now it's finally making sense. No wonder. She's crazy. It's because of you. Your father throws his hands up in protest, his fake nails catching the light. She's my daughter. Of course, I'm going to spoil her, and who better to take care of her than me? Jungkook groans, standing up and pacing behind his desk. She doesn't need to be spoiled right now, Dad. She needs someone who can handle her stubbornness, who can say no to her, who won't let her get away with the skipping meals and staying up all night binge watching dramas. He gestures wildly as he speaks, the expiration clear in his voice, and that is someone, not you. Your father folds his arm, pouting like a child. I can say no to her. Jungkook stops pacing and stares at his incredulous. Really? You, the man who bought her three different cars just because she couldn't decide which color she liked more? Your dad frowns. They were slightly. That's exactly my point, Jungkook explains, throwing his hands in the air. She's pregnant, Dad, pregnant, and she's already careless enough as it is. You would just let her do whatever she wants, and that's the last thing she needs right now. Your father sits up straight now. Jungkook's cough, running a hand through his hair in disbelief. You always let her run wild. You can't say no to her. The moment she throws a tantrum, you fold like a house of cards. I do not fold, his dad says indigently. I just don't like seeing her upset. Jungkook stares at him completely at a loss. You just prove my point. She needs discipline right now, not someone who will let her skip doctor's appointments. Your father whines again, leaning forward dramatically. But I want to be the one to take care of her. I know her better than anyone. Jungkook shakes his head, pacing again. No, Dad, absolutely not. I can't believe I even have to say this, but you in wig and a padded bra does not qualify you for the job. You are an absolute disaster, and I am not letting that happen. His father looks hurt, though still not entirely defeated. I just want to take care of her. Is that bad? Yes, in this case, yes. Jungkook stops and faces his father in low, frustrated beyond words because you will just encourage her to ignore every bit of advice, every rule. She needs someone strict, someone who will make sure she's actually taking care of herself, not indulging every whim. Your father crosses his arms, still pounding. Yeah, right, you're about as strict as wet paper towel. His dad slouches in the chair looking defeated. You are so mean. Jungkook groans, rubbing his face with his hands. I'm not being mean, Dad. I'm being realistic. You can't handle wine, specifically not when she's pregnant. It's that simple. Your father sits up straightener, looking offended by the statement. His voice takes on an overly confident tone, like he's got something to prove. I can be tough, I can be strict, and I can make her follow the rules. Jungkook lets out a loud, sarcastic laugh, shaking his head in disbelief. You strict with Van, Dad. The last time you tried to scold her, she ended up with a brand new sports car. He leans forward, narrowing his eyes. Let's be real here. You've never been able to say no to her. Your father crosses his arms, puffing up his chest as if he's in middle of the business negotiation. If you don't believe me, you can test me. Jungkook pinches the bridge of his nose, clearly done with the conversation, but knowing your dad won't stop until he's proven whatever ridiculous point he's trying to make. Dad, you're just wasting both of our time. We know Lion has you wrapped around his little finger. You can't control her. Your father leans forward, his voice filled with stubborn determination. Just give me a chance, Jungkook. I'll show you how I keep her in check. You won't believe your eyes. Jungkook lets out a long sigh, rubbing his temples like he's already exhausted by the idea. He knows this won't end well, but arguing further is pointless. Fine, fine. I'll give you a chance. He throws his hands up in the air in surrender, staring at his father. In disbelief, I can't believe I'm agreeing to this. Your father grins from ear to ear like he just won some kind of grand prize. His excitement almost childlike. Jungkook watches him with the wide eyes, wondering how on the earth a man who controls a $1 billion empire can act like this. Unbelievable, Jungkook mutters under his breath. Leaning back in his chair, Jungkook eyes his father suspiciously. You seem awfully experienced in this whole handling one thing. Should I be worried? Your father looks at him, feeling innocence. In what? Jungkook smirks, raising an eyebrow in becoming a woman, Dad. Isn't your first time, is it? Your father burst into laughter, waving off the comment like it's most normal thing in the world. When Wise was little and missed her mom, I used to dress up and pretend to be a mommy. I made her feel better. Jungkook jaw drops for a moment before he lets out a low sarcastic chuckle. No wonder she's crazy, and you might be even crazier. He shakes his head, still processing what he just heard. Before slipping on his glasses and standing up, he grabs his car keys and looks back at his father, who's still grinning like a fool. Well, if you're serious about this, then hurry. We are going home so you can take this test of yours. His voice drips with sarcasm, but his dad doesn't seem to notice or care. Your father jumps up excitedly, like this is the moment he's been waiting for all his life. Jungkook just stares at him. Completely baffled, this man is a literal billionaire and here he is getting ready to play house. As Jungkook walks out of the office, he muttered to himself, this is what my life has become to. I'm taking my father-in-law home so that he can pretend to be a nanny of my pregnant wife. Fantastic. He heads towards his car, shaking his head, already imagining the chaos that's going to unfold when they get home. What is wrong with this family? He mumbles to himself, rolling his eyes as he unlocks the car. Come on, Dad, let's get this over with before I change my mind. Your father practically skips to the car, still wearing that ridiculous wig. Jungkook glances him sideways, fighting back a laugh. This is going to be a disaster, he thinks, but before also a strange sense of amusement bubbling up inside him. Dad, Jungkook says as he gets into the driver's seat, turning to look at him one more time. Please take that wig off. Your father shakes his head, patting the wig proudly. No way, I need to stay in character if I'm going to pass the test. Jungkook groans, slumping against the steering wheel for a moment. I can't believe I'm doing this. And with that, they drive off, Jungkook already bracing himself for whatever chaos awaits for them at home. Jungkook pulls the car into the driveway, already regretting every decision that led to this moment. As he and your father, still in full disguise as a woman, step inside the house, the scent of the expensive candles fill the air. There you are, lounging on the plush sofa like a princess, surrounded by a team of professionals standing up to your every need. One lady is giving you a pedicure, another is working on your nails, and you are chatting away like the world your glossy hair falls perfectly around your shoulders as you extend your hand to admire your freshly done nails sparkling with tiny diamonds. You wiggle your toes and sigh, looking at the epitome of a spoiled rich girl living in her own world. Jungkook rolls his eyes the moment he sees you. Of course, he thinks a whole day of pampering while the world moves around her. He crosses his arm, trying not to let this annoyance show too much, though it's impossible to hide completely. You glance up at him with a wide smile, holding out your hand towards him. Baby, look at my nails. Aren't they gorgeous? You ask, fluttering your eyes like you expect him to blown away. Jungkook barely spares them a glance, his expression completely unimpressed. Yeah, great. So, what have you eaten today? His voice is firm. You, however, ignore his question entirely, too caught up in admiring the new design on your nails. Your attention shifts suddenly as your eyes fall on the father of your father dressed as a woman standing beside Jungkook. You squint, tilting your head confused. You don't recognize him at all, and why would you? He's in a wig, makeup, and a floral dress, looking like some strange nanny who's wandered into your house. Who is she? You ask, pointing towards your father, completely clueless. She's your new nanny, he says, his tone dry. She's going to make sure you eat your meals and take medicines on time. You blink in surprise, giving the nanny a curious once over. You don't seem too concerned, just mildly interested. "Hmm, okay, you hum like having a nanny is no big deal at all, especially with your lifestyle." Your father, fully committed to his role, sits down beside you, gently taking your hand in his. His voice is high pitched, exaggeratedly feminine as he beams at you. Oh wow, darling, your nails are so beautiful. You immediately brighten up at the compliment, your eyes lighting up with excitement. Really? You say, practically glowing. You think so? Your father nods enthusiastically, holding your hand closer to admire the sparkly design. Yes, yes, so elegant, such a lovely choice. The diamonds really. You giggle, clearly loving the praise. Oh my gosh, thank you. The two of you continue chatting in the most girly, high pitched voice imaginable. You are gushing about nail designs, color, and which celebrity has the best manicure, while your father is chiming in with exaggerated compliments, pretending to care about every detail of your beauty routine. It's like you have found a kindred spirit in your nanny, completely unaware. Jungkook, meanwhile, stands off to the side, staring at the scene unfolding in front of him with a look of utter disbelief. His brow furrows, his lips pressed into a thin line as he watches the two of you bond over nail polish. This is my life now, he thinks, unable to process how absurd the situation is. As your father continues to fawn over your nails, Jungkook lets out a light dramatic sigh. Seriously, he mutters under his breath, rolling his eyes so hard. Jungkook stares at the two of you, utterly bored out of his mind. Yeah, great, really important stuff, he mutters sarcastically, not even trying to hide how done he is with the whole situation. But you and your father, you are in your own world, bonding over all the things girly and glamorous as if nothing. Jungkook watches the bizarre interaction unfold between you and your father. He crosses his arms and leans against the kitchen counter, a sarcastic smile plastered across his face. If you are done, Mrs. Kim, he says to your father, maybe you can back to the job you were hired for. You know, feeding Ryan. You instantly turn your head to Jungkook, throwing, no, not yet, I'm not hungry. You insist, pouting like a spoiled child. You should sit down, Nanny. I want to talk to you. You're so cool. Jungkook raises an eyebrow, trying to ignore Ryan. Mrs. Kim, I think you should not forget your job. Your father glares at Jungkook, clearly annoyed by his sarcasm. He stands up, smoothing down his floral dress. I'll go to the kitchen and make sure the soup is ready, he says, leaving the living room. As soon as your father exits, you turn to Jungkook, making your best puppy face. I'm not hungry, you complain, exaggerating your pout, letting your bottom lip quiver for maximum effect. Jungkook rolls his eyes, fighting to urge to smile. That puppy face might melt your daddy's heart, he retorts, but it sure as hell isn't going to work on me. Don't show me that. You dramatically clasp, clutching your chest in shock. You're so rude. I miss daddy.